and get that going and use that sort of um, object manager that we've been kind of starting to play around with. All right, so I did the usual stuff. I basically made a new project called login. I went into that login folder, made a directory called apps, went into that apps folder, made the init.py, started up a new app called login test, went back up a directory and started up Atom. And then I actually went through and did a few more things to just kind of get us going, and those are things that are just copying from the platform. So I added the settings. So I added login test to our settings. I went in to our models and copied in the models exactly from the platform. So this is verbatim, minus the fact that I said, instead of yes, I am going to, I said yes, we are going to force you guys to parse through some quarks and args. Cool. So this is where I'm at. I also made a view, and that view is pretty exciting. I put index in here, and I put a URL that said, hey, run that view. So now what I want to do is just kind of show you what happens when we try and do stuff with that user model. So remember, in our controller, we need to access our models. We already have access to our template engine, so we don't actually have to access our views, but we definitely have to access our models from here. So we want to say from.models, so we're going into this folder, get users, so import user. All right, so now we can use that user model, and we can use that user manager that we created as a property of user, and we do things like login. And login takes two parameters, so let's do spiros@gmail.com or codingdojo.com, and let's also pass in Spiros as his name, or as the password. He's gonna be so mad that I used his actual password. No, just kidding. He has probably like a 70-character long password. Cool. So at this point, it should be more or less functional, but we haven't made our migrations yet. And so all I want to really point out and really emphasize is this fact, that we've created this new property in our user class, and that user property is actually an instance of this user manager class. And so we get access to login, that takes email and password, and register, which gets access to all these quarks. So we're going to be able to pass things in, and when we do run these methods, right now they're just going to print these things. So that's fantastic, but user manager also gets access to all the other manager properties, and that's that ORM. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. We can run queries and whatnot using this user manager, so we can make customized queries. And that's kind of one of the key parts of models. And so basically we can say, when we log in, do a bunch of tests on email and password, just like we did in Flask, or when we register, do a bunch of tests on these quarks that we pass in, these keyword arguments that we're passing in, and then determine whether or not we're going to pass back a successful login or an unsuccessful login. So that's kind of the overarching goal that we're going to try to achieve. And so let's just see this in action. So we've kind of got this thing set up, and now we're just going to make our migrations, migrate it, and then run it, and watch what happens. We're going to get one error because we're not actually, well, let's fix that error and just get a view. So we're going to, instead of just rendering, we're going to return, or sorry, HTTP response. So that we can return our HTTP response that says something. So return HTTP response. And let's actually run this again as our response, and we'll return just a string from there. All right, so returning this thing as our HTTP response, and so our actual models, that manager needs to return something at this point, not just pass. So let's return, I will be a future login method made by Coding Dojo students. Fantastic. All right, so let's go ahead and play with this. So again, the things that we're going to have to do back in our terminal, at this point we're going to have to make our migrations, right? And then we're going to have to migrate them, and then we can run our server, and hopefully when we go to our root route, we're going to see this string pop up. And we're also going to see in our terminal these things get printed out, because we're saying, hey, go to this user model from our controller, that user model brings something back to our controller and then renders a view. Right? So there's the whole MVC model in action. Great. So let's do it. So Python manage py, make migrations. Oops. All right. So let's see where I screwed up my syntax. So line 9 in models. Models line 9. All right. So here we have something going south. Let's see if I'm missing parentheses or something in this print statement. So that looks okay. I have one extra parentheses, but that should be fine. And then not successful, line 9. Let's go back to that and see if we can figure out what else might be going wrong there. See if there's any other information. So print in line 9. Test models.py. Let's comment out line 9. Ah, there's that. So, no, that should be okay. But this is missing. There we go. Cool. So it was a line 8 error where we were missing a parenthesis at the end of that print. And it kind of got blended in with this green text. All right, cool. So let's try that again. Sorry about that slight detour. All right, so now we've got line 17, probably the same exact problem because I copy and pasted that. So we just need a parentheses there. And then next try. All right. Oh, line 29 of testmodels.py, triple parentheses because I copied it from the platform. Copied one line too many. Cool. All right, so there we go. So now I have create model user, and now we can make those migrations. So Python manage py migrate. Fantastic. Now we can Python manage py run server. All right, again, now when we go to localhost, hopefully what we're going to see, so localhost 8000, hopefully we'll see the print from that user. So we went from controller to model, back to controller, out to view. So let's do that. We'll drag this guy down and go to localhost 8000. And there it is. So here's all the print statements. Kablam. And we ran that twice, so we got the print statements twice. We ran it once inside of the method index, and then we ran it a second time on that return, and that's why we get this double print statement. And then here's the awesome result of that. Cool. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the use of bcrypt in Django. So it's going to be very similar to make our authorization model and regex and email. So it's going to be a lot of the same things that you did in Flask, but now we're going to be using this user manager prospect to kind of deal with that. And then we're going to use that user manager also to do ORM stuff. And so we're going to use this part of ORM called raw. And raw, as you might imagine, is going to be the SQL query.